Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay.
I am Charlie.
And today we're going to be talking about, are you feeling like you're in a relationship where you have the short straw?
And before we even do that, I am going to name what I'm having to deal with right now, which is a very handsome, very dashing man. You can't see if you're just listening on Spotify. But Lindsay did not read the room today. So last week when we went to film the podcast, I looked quite reasonable and dashing myself, and you came out in pajamas. And now today I'm rocking a bit of a homeless look, as I tend to do sometimes, and you're in a freaking shirt and bolo tie, mate.
Do you like?
Yeah, I do.
Well, it was a bit of course correction from last week. I thought, oh dear.
You flipped, the pendulum swung all the other way.
I've come out dashing. Charlotte looks like she's jumped out of a dumpster. Kidding.
And a little bit. I love this. I'm actually wearing a really epic cardigan that I got in a Japanese op shop like 5 years ago.
And what did you find in that today?
I found a lip balm that has held itself together all this time, and I found a hairband.
Did you find any of my pens?
I am a pen hoarder, but no pens. But if you're watching on YouTube, then you totally get what I'm talking about. But
You can rate it. Rate my outfit.
who wore it better?
So, let's get into it.
Handsome. Yeah. So in relationship, what we notice working with couples, and even like this plays out for us, but especially when a couple have been together for a while, like a long-term, emotionally committed relationship, often a couple will fall into the trap of fighting to be the biggest victim. They feel like each individual feels like they have pulled the short straw. They really feel like they have it harder. They're holding like the brunt of the load. They're carrying the ship. They're doing like, you've got it better than me. I'm doing all the work. And when the trap that we see is when both couples are actually both feeling the same hurt and lack of appreciation, and then they just really get stuck in trigger meeting trigger, unable to see that they're actually suffering in the same way because it can look different on the surface.
Yeah, and that pain that you're painting the picture of here is like, it's so relevant. It's for each couple in those instances of like, just maybe it might be years together of like really trying and really showing up. And, you know, I know this for so many couples that have family and have kids. It's like, I stay home, I do all the stuff that my partner never sees. Like there's just so much that goes into running the household, picking up, dropping off. And then for the opposite partner that's say providing with work and financial, it's like, the stress of that, the late nights of trying to make sure this is all happening and the money is coming in, and you know what that takes as well, being outside and being away from the kids, like what the cost that is, you know. So really like having so much compassion for both parties, both feeling like they have the short straw.
And for us, being on the outside looking into a relationship, like we can sit here and have so much compassion for both, and we want the other to have the compassion that we see for them, like for themselves.
Yes.
And for their partner. But when you're just too in the trigger, it can be so hard. It can be so hard to like put the sword down or to soften or to like really kind of zoom out and look down at the bigger picture of like what everyone actually is doing and how we're both kind of suffering in the same way. And like, fuck, we're actually in this together. And instead it just feels like it's you versus me.
Yeah.
You don't see me. You don't hear me. I'm not met.
Yeah.
And it's a really tricky place for a couple. Have so much compassion for this place.
Yeah, and in this, it's like we spoke about it and we'll continue to speak about it probably forever, is around this, you know, like the process is validating each other. And like how hard that is when we are the ones feeling like we are drowning, like I am drowning right now, and I'm having to try and validate their experience before mine is validated. Oh, the heart that takes to really like put my story down and just really see if I can get into the other's shoes and validate. And again, validation is not necessarily agreeing, or agreement, but it's just like, oh my God, I can only imagine what it must be like for you to do all what you do. And I have no idea, because could be the other side of it, is we might not ever really know what our partner is actually going through, even though it's our most intimate person. This is the other side. It's like the bigness of that we might not ever fully get the experience, but can we acknowledge that other?
I want to just, like, you're really good at this. You're really good at putting your sword down first and leaning into repair with me to be like, I see you. Like, I see you, I feel you. Like, you take responsibility for your part. And like, I just want to like commend you for doing such a good job of that, because in relationship, hopefully there is a balance of both partners being able to be the one to like drop the sword first and validate the other one. But I know in our relationship, like, you kind of carry that for us. And I'm so grateful that you have that skill, because by you doing that and leaning in that way, it's actually teaching me how to do it.
Yeah, and you've come leaps and bounds in it as well.
I know.
Because I mean, for me, it's what I've learned in this for myself is like, oh, I can do this really well. And it's because if we're in a relationship, like I was for a long period of time, where the other is almost reluctant to ever take ownership first, happy to take ownership for what they're happy to take ownership. But for me, it was like, I'm just so willing to not be in the argument, not be in the fight.
Whereas
like,
I have a bit more of a tendency to be in the fight. If I'm in the trigger, I can fight for my trigger sometimes. And like, that's what I see most couples do. So it's like, that's why we get stuck, because we start fighting really hard to defend our upset.
Yeah.
Rather than fighting to be in love, rather than fighting for the relationship. And where couples, like, it starts becoming, that's not what happened. Or like, I don't agree with you. And like, that loop is a lose-lose. Because it's like you said, it's actually never about agreeing. It's not about we have to get on the same page and agree exactly what happened. But it is just like, I don't want to fight. I want to be in this relationship. And I can validate your experience, even if I don't agree with it.
100%. It's such a hack. And I think in that, there was something that I was holding and I've just forgotten it. But it was around, like, yeah, having that willingness. I've lost it.
Well, I think another important part is like, what happens when a couple is in trigger meeting trigger. Often both parties are in overwhelm. And the thing with overwhelm, and I can't speak in an absolute, like it's always like this for women and it's always like this for men, but more often than not, overwhelm presents very differently.
Yeah.
And this plays out in our relationship. So if I am in overwhelm, then I get louder, I get more emotional, I get faster, I go more into like fight. Whereas if you're in overwhelm, you collapse, you shut down, you bunker down, and you get quieter. So because often if the feminine is getting louder and more hysterical, then that's where, what am I saying? It's like,
oh, well, it becomes like the wound of the general wound of the feminine, which is I'm too much, which is like I'm being hysterical. So it's like you're the loudest one. So it's like you're being the problem, or you're taking it too far.
But what I mean, it's like the one being the most emotional gets the attention of like, this is, all right, this is the biggest victim. This is like, it's really bad for the person who's being the loudest with the overwhelm. And this is what I do. And then when you kind of shutting down, going quiet, I then can perceive that as you not caring as much. Because I can't see your overwhelm because it's not presenting like my overwhelm. So you must not care as much as I do. You must not love me as much. And like that can be another really big trigger. But it's like your version of overwhelm is collapse and shutdown. Whereas mine is,
And yeah, I think this is such like, I wish the listeners could really get this fully, no matter what, is that we each have a different version of overwhelm. And how can we actually have compassion for that person being in the same experience as us, but presenting it in a different way?
Well, now that I know that your version of overwhelm looks like shutdown, when I see you go into shutdown, I can now actually, that has now triggered something in me to soften, because it's like, this is his version of like me throwing a tantrum.
Yes.
Like that's actually where he's at right now. So can I can hold that part if I'm not too triggered in my overwhelm, right? But it's just
Totally.
Our overwhelm looks different.
Yeah, and I think that's, it's the same for our partners, and in the same way that it's like when you are, in basic terms, being hysterical or being triggered, which is overwhelm, it's kind of like knowing that it's okay. Like, I'm not taking it personally. Like, in that moment of you going into like hyperdrive, is like, that's okay. Like, letting you have that for yourself is like moving through all the emotion and saying it and doing it and feeling it. Because me trying to like, it'd be like me trying to tell you to calm down, as if that's going to work. And I know there's lots of memes around that, but I'm sure people are still like that in relationship, of just like, well, when you calm down, then we can talk about it. Me being logical at that moment of overwhelm is kind of like when I'm in shutdown, you just going, just cheer up. Just cheer up. It's like, it doesn't work. It absolutely, like, we can see what's obvious, but it's actually allowing the other to go through their process in a way where we don't, it's almost like we're not getting in the way of it. It's really hard to not take our partner's trigger or overwhelm personally as well, like you were saying. And then we can actually, once the process is happening and we become more regulated, go and maybe do our own internal work, and then come back to actually have a proper conversation. It's just knowing when we're in it. Like we said before, when we've talked about our conflict plan and what we recommend couples do as far as knowing how to call a time out.
That honestly is the gold, because conflict is going to happens in our relationship. Relationship tension is normal. So it's about having an agreement around how the conflict is going to be handled. And what I always suggest couples do is give each other permission. Whoever's the least triggered, whoever is the one that has the capacity to call out that we're getting into dangerous territory. We're getting into some really familiar behavior right now. We're about to loop. We are looping. And can we slow down? And that's not to just dismiss it or like end the conversation, but it's just we have to call out our loops. One of us has to name it so we can actually circuit break it. And then it's like, okay, we've actually set this agreement up that we can give each other permission to do this, and I have to be in integrity with my agreement, which is when we call it, we then take a breath. Actually, less words. We actually just stop.
And I think that's really good, like the slowing it down when you know that you're speeding it up. And mine is to, like, for me, that wants to shut down is like, I need to stay in connection with you. Because if I go too far into shutdown, I don't give you eye contact, I go quiet. So it's like, for me, it's not, I'm already slowing down, but it's like, can I stay in connection with you so we don't lose it with each other? That's what I've sort of noticed.
Isn't that interesting? Because like, yeah, I get more intense and I'm like looking at you for like, we got to fix this, we got to resolve this, and you like go away. It feels like you go further away from me, which I then can perceive as, well, how dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you leave me here in this? So we need to know what our own reactivity looks like. What's our flavor of triggered reactivity? What's our partner's? So we can see the warning signs and we can actually just start naming it before it gets too far and escalating.
And that's self-revealing. Always in this of just like speaking to it before it gets to the tipping point. Because once we're both triggered, it goes nowhere, and this is why I'm always just such a big fan of like having self-compassion and self-awareness around these things, so we can kind of pick it up before it comes. It never rains without seeing some clouds roll in first, in a way. So it's like, okay, we're both feeling like there's some clouds rolling in. Can we name it? Can we name it?
Honestly, self-revealing is the gold. And I speak to women all the time who they don't self-reveal until it's too late. Like, the reason someone wouldn't self-reveal is because they might think that they're being a bit crazy, or I don't know how to say it, or I'm just going to try and sort this out in my own head, or it's just like, don't know how to use my voice, or like find the words, I don't have to, like, for whatever reason, couples or like people don't self-reveal, but it always ends up coming out later, louder, or it ends up coming out sideways, or it ends up coming out like in passive aggression. It ends up, you just end like, to not self-reveal is just to contain it in your body. And it's going to come out. It's like we have to be in the practice of exposing our hurt and scared in a way that really, like, before it gets to this explosion or implosion.
Definitely. And I think too, it's like we are big fans of this like inner work and our own self-work in relationship. But like we had that instance the other day where you said you held something and it felt like it was okay. And then when I came back to the room and you saw me, it was like,
and this can happen. It's like I was triggered and I took full responsibility for it. I moved through some practices, I moved the energy, and I actually felt better. And yeah, the minute you came, the minute I saw your face, it was like, wow, it's still there, because there's actually still some unspoken words. I need to still self-reveal to you. It's not fully cleared. I moved the energy for myself, but I still need to be vulnerable with you and share what's going on. Then it was cleared.
And I think that's so important, like we've spoken about recently, like vulnerability for a man is his honesty. The more honest he can be with himself and honest with his partner and speak his truth, then he'll feel cleaner, clearer, and she'll be able to respect and trust him more because he's spoken his truth. And I honestly believe that for a woman to receive a man's like honesty and his truth, it's like, even if it hurts, it's like, oh, I can trust this. Yeah, I can trust this man.
That's it. Like, we want the feminine. I want your no. I don't always like your no, but I actually want it. It means that you are a man of integrity. It means that you are a man that honors your boundaries. I can trust you. I might not like that all the time, but it's what I want in a man. I want a man who can lead me. And so it's not always, you're not appeasing me. You're not appeasing me. It's like...
And I'm not coming to you for permission either on certain things. Like that can be something that happens with the feminine too. Like the guy can't quite get it right or wants his partner to like give him permission on things, and that can feel triggering as well. It's like a lot of women just like want their man to tell them actually how it is. So then they can be in the process of like being in that interaction. I think that's really important as well.
And so a reason that a man might come and ask for permission rather than just speak his truth, like what's happening there usually?
Usually there's like a fear of getting it wrong or repercussion. Sometimes when we go, I'm going to go and do this, so I'm just going to perfect example is often in times women say, I want you to lead this relationship. So then I'm like, cool, I'm the man, I'm going to lead it. And then we do something and then we get told it was wrong or it wasn't done in the right way. And then we get criticized for it. And it's like, if that keeps happening, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to come to you and ask for permission or ask what's going to be right or wrong because I'm trying to do the right thing here.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a double-edged sword for couples in relationship where one feels criticized but at the same time wants their partner to lead, but then will criticize their leadership. So it's like, totally get it. You can lead your relationship, but you have to own, as a man, you have to own the fact that you're not always going to get it right. So can you actually take that criticism or take that, like reflection and be okay with it and not fall down when your partner goes, good job for leading, didn't go as well as I thought it would.
Yeah.
And it's that there's lots of layers to this.
There's work on both sides there. Like definitely for the masculine to be able to hold what the consequences of his leadership and still trust himself and still stay in the position of leader and just keep going. Like trust himself enough to be like, I still got this.
Yeah.
Without taking it so personally, because like you said, human, not always going to get it right. And then there's the work for the feminine who does ask for her man's leadership but can't actually receive it. So there's some work there too around healing the wounds around the masculine potentially.
Yeah, so I think bringing this right back to this like feeling like who's got the shortest straw, it's like I honestly think that individuals in relationship are not acknowledging themselves enough. they're looking to have their partner validate them or their experience and what they're up to. And it kind of puts the person in a perpetual state of like not feeling good enough or not feeling appreciated, because often at times it's a lack of self-appreciation.
So true. It's so true. Like when a couple is really enmeshed with one another and they kind of morph together, there definitely is this reliance on like, I need you to tell me I'm a good boy or a good girl. I need you to let me know I'm doing a good job. And yes, we do want to hear words of affirmation from our partner, but it would absolutely make the world of difference if we were providing that internal validation ourselves. We can't rely on external validation. It's like we can receive it and enjoy it, but it's like at the core, we have to know that we're doing a good job. Yes. We have to know that we're doing our best. We have to know that. We don't need it. I don't need to hear it from you.
Yeah, and that's the big, like, that is a big job, and takes, in my case, it's taken many, many years to get to that point of like, men always ask and come to me to want to have more confidence and want to have more certainty and more clarity in their lives. And I have to go through this process with them, which is very specifically around self-appreciation, which is what I am doing is good work and I appreciate it in myself, and I also can validate myself, because that's actually how you develop confidence. People like feel like it's elusive. Confidence is not elusive. Do what you said, do a good job, live your life in alignment, and self-acknowledge and self-appreciate yourself. You can't go wrong.
And if you're doing that, and then I come along and I say, I don't like this, you can just take that on without taking it personally.
Correct.
And then we don't have to fall in a hole around, well, I don't appreciate you, and now it's this huge thing. You're just
or you say, oh, well, I feel like I can't give you feedback, or I can't speak my truth. Like, imagine that. If it's like every time you speak your truth, I take it personally and fall in a hole, that means you can't actually just...
So then I'm holding shit in, I'm building up my unspoken words, and it's just, absolute disaster.
And that's, often a case is what a lot of people are doing in relationship is, if you're in a long-term relationship and you've been long-term in the conflict phase and have had lots of conflict, have had damage in the relationship, and actually don't know how to clear it up and don't actually know how to fully repair and speak to the agreements that you need to set up, you get into a stalemate. And this stalemate is, I'm not going to validate you, and you're not going to validate me, and I'm going to have the shorter straw, and then we're sitting there enduring the relationship. And often at times, this is what we see for long-term couples, is they're kind of at a stalemate with each other. And I've watched it. I watch couples sit there and they kind of bicker. It's almost like children or siblings together, where it's like, they're not praising each other, they're kind of just at a stalemate with each other. They're tolerating each other almost, and it's a power struggle. What I watch is like this power struggle of, like you said before, who can be the biggest victim, and no one's really championing each other because both parties are at a point of like almost exhaustion. Both are exhausted, both are overworked, both are underappreciated, both are stressed, and they're not actually playing as a team. They're actually two individuals on the same team having unresolved conflict. Sit there.
So what's the antidote?
Well, we've spoken about it. It's a lot around validating each other, having some compassion. I would say starting with actually like a practice of self-appreciation, because you actually have to see what you need to have acknowledged in yourself first before anyone else can validate it really, because otherwise it's codependent. Otherwise it's like the only way I can feel good is when my partner says I'm good. That is a recipe of disaster, to be honest. So I feel like we have kind of spoken into the process, and obviously it's what we do with couples. Is like, the thing with this too is it's not an easy fix, but it's not also painless either, because to heal this, we kind of have to open it up a little bit.
We have to expose the wounds.
Oh, and it's so painful. It's like you might start to do this work and it actually is a bit more painful than it is by not looking at it. But this is the thing, the long-term win is actually the short-term pain. And typically this is why we're in this mess in the first place, is often we avoid the conflict today, hoping that later it will be better. Doesn't work like that. That if you don't clean the glass today, it makes that mess on the glass harder to clean tomorrow because it dries for longer.
And I think it would be valid to say it's important to come and be in the practice and learn some skills before we dive into the deep end of the biggest hurt that we have in our relationship. It's like we can learn, we can do some cleaning the glass, I can validate something quite simple, and then it's like, but we got to go there. We got to look in the shadows. We got to go.
And it is sometimes uncomfortable and painful, and this is the process, when we work with couples over months, sometimes it's up and then sometimes it's down a bit, and it's not just like it gets to get better every week. It's like sometimes we hit bumps in the road that neither of us are prepared for, or the couple is necessarily. This is the hard dynamic of relationships.
Relationship is so freaking complex. There's so many moving parts. There's so much fragility as there is strength and resilience. Like I really am a champion for a couple's resilience to do this work, but it's like we're working with our egos, our delicate little egos and our little inner child and all these parts that just really, they got a lot to say. They haven't been heard for so long.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily we could go on for hours, but I feel like that's the crux of it. I
think it's to notice, just notice. Notice if you're fighting to be the biggest victim. Notice if you're in trigger meeting trigger and you're both fighting actually for the same thing. And it's like, we want to always remember to be in service to the relationship. Not me, not you. Yes, we can support these other really important parts, but what does the relationship need right now? What does the family need? What does the bigger dynamic need? What does love need? How can we fight for that instead?
That's amazing.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it for today.
Oh yeah, all right.
That felt like a big one.
Well, it's just there's so much to it, and yeah.
Yeah, and we've got cool news.
We have something really cool. Did we share it last week?
Yeah, but we can share it every week.
We're going to keep talking about it, and that is our half-day workshop. And it's coming up. It's not that far away. It's the 7th of September. So if you are in the Gold Coast, or if you're able to travel...
If you're on the east coast of Australia and have an airport available, come.
Absolutely. 5 hours in the vortex with us, so we can deep dive into internal work, relational skills, and the intimacy piece. It's going to be epic. I'm so excited.
I love in-person stuff.
You're good at it.
And it just gets to be couples that invest in their relationship have epic relationships. It's like anything. Where you put attention, your energy, that's where it flows. So to come and put time and energy and effort into your relationship to build the skills, come on down.
And it doesn't just happen. So many people are kind of unconscious how they fall into a relationship, and then they end up quite passive or too afraid to touch it. Let's not break it. But it's epic relationships do not just happen. They are a constant work. The work gets lighter and more playful and fun. And it's the journey that you're going to be on for life. And it's when you are committed to that, it's what's available is freaking mind-blowing.
Really is.
Relationship gets to be a highlight of your life. It gets to be what this? Handsome man.
Cutie McTootie.
So yeah, come and join us. You know where to find us.
Yep, tickets are definitely on sale. So I'm Lindsay B on socials.
I am Charlie S. Hannah, and then the Embodied Union podcast and Instagram.
All right, thanks for today. Love you, Greta.
My love.